Hi everybody and welcome back to Main Mission Hope. I'm Rob and I'm here to humbly offer answers to questions you might have about faith, God, Jesus, the Bible and what it all means for your life, especially if you're new to Christianity or returning to it like me after some time away. Now remember, I'm not a theological expert, I'm just an amateur who likes sharing some of the things that I've learnt with other people, and hopefully these videos are a way of triggering you to explore these issues with let's just say better resources than the ones I give you. But today I want to talk about something that can feel really heavy, but it's really important, because when you believe in God, Jesus Christ and the resurrection, you know, the good stuff, if you like, what does that mean about the reality of the devil, demons, bad spirits and false prophets in our world right now? Because if you've got all the good stuff, you know, if you become a good Christian, if you follow the tenets of whichever church you join, or if you don't join a church, just, you know, the teachings of Jesus Christ, if you accept that and accept the resurrection, you kind of have to accept that the devil exists, demons exist, bad spirits exist and false prophets exist, because Jesus warns us about these. So how do we make sense of the bad things that are happening all around us? And I don't know about you, but sometimes the world feels overwhelming. Wars, injustice, cruelty, people behaving and making decisions about things that just doesn't make sense. It's like they deliberately want to make the world, or your world, worse. It's hard to watch the news without wondering what's going on and what are these people thinking. And as a Christian, I've asked myself, is this just people making terrible choices? Or, you know, could there be something darker at work? And I believe that Christianity offers hope even in the face of these questions. And I hope by the end of this video, you'll feel that too. So let's start with the truth that I've come to lean on. Evil is real. When I accepted God and Jesus into my life, I couldn't ignore what the Bible said about the devil, sometimes called Satan, who's described as God's adversary. Jesus faced demons and evil spirits during his time on earth, casting them out, and he warned about false prophets who twist the truth. One verse that sticks with me is Matthew 16:18, where Jesus says, "And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Now, to me, that's a promise. You know, evil definitely exists. Evil is in the world, but it won't win. So what about today? What about the world we live in? And, you know, you've got to wonder, and I wonder, if the devil, demons or bad spirits, you know, are they still active? Are they behind the actions of people, governments or organisations or religions that seem so incomprehensible? The Bible suggests, well, they could be. In Ephesians 6:12, and apologies if I get these names wrong when I read them out, it says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." No, I mean, that can be a really sobering thought, couldn't it? Spiritual warfare might be real, because we can spend an awful lot of time trying to rationalise why people do the things they do, why people make the decisions they do. And maybe you just can't rationalise it. Maybe their decisions aren't rational anyway, but maybe they're not rational because there's other forces at work. But here's why I've had to think carefully, because of course God gave us free will, the ability to choose good or evil. But when I see corruption or violence, I realise a lot of it comes from people choosing sin over love. I don't always need to point to demons. You know, humans are more than capable of doing boundless, limitless evil on their own without the devil or anybody else having to influence them. You know, dictators oppressing people, company exploiting the vulnerable. You know, it's awful, but often it's just human greed or pride at work. Still, there are times when evil feels so extreme, so unimaginable, that I wonder if something more is going on. Could the devil or demons influence those choices? Maybe. False prophets, false religions, people claim to speak to God but leading others astray might also play a role. Now, as a layperson, as an amateur, I can't know for sure. I don't have a spiritual microscope to see what's behind every bad event. But I found it's okay to consider these forces as a way to cope with what's otherwise too hard to understand. So how do I deal with this in my daily life? And I've come up with a few practical steps that help me, and maybe they'll help you too. First, I look at what's happening. If something like a movement or a person's actions seem bent on destruction or chaos for no clear reason, I pause. Evil that doesn't even pretend to have a purpose feels different, and I wonder, is that more than human? Secondly, I think about what Jesus said in Matthew 7:16. You will recognise them by their fruits. If someone's life or work produces hatred, despair or confusion, things against God's will, I'll question what's driving them. It might just be their choices, but it could be a hint at something deeper. Third, I return to prayer and the Bible. When I'm unsure, I'll ask God for wisdom. James 4:7 says, submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. That's been a lifeline for me, trusting God to guide me through the mess. Finally, I try not to overthink it. I've learned that obsessing over demons can make me fearful, and that's not what God wants. In 2 Timothy 1:7, he says, God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control, and I hold on to that. Here's what keeps me going. No matter what's causing the evil I see or what you see, free will or something darker, I don't have to figure it all out. My job isn't to solve the mystery. It's to trust God and live out my faith. When the world feels unbearable, of course, I pray. I ask for protection and strength. I lean on my church community for support, and I focus on doing good, loving others, helping where I can, because that's how I push back against the darkness. The best part? Well, I believe Jesus has already won. His resurrection proves that evil doesn't get the last word. So even when I'm shaken by what's happening in the world, I hold on to hope. And I hope you can too. And I very much believe that when you come to Christianity, and one of the great releases of Christianity is to be able to unload your worrying about things you can't control onto God and Jesus, and saying, look, I trust you to help me with these things that I can't control, so I can concentrate on helping myself and the people around me and my family and other people. I can concentrate with the things that I can control, and that is fantastic. That's a really massive part of Christianity for me. The fact that you can trust God. Listen, he's going to look after the things that you can't control. You don't know how he's going to do it. You don't know his methods. You can't understand where, when, or why, but you give him that trust. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. And I think the same thing goes with evil actions. So if you're trying to understand, you're worrying about, well, why do people do this? Why does the government do this? Surely they should have done this. Why did this person do this? When it seems completely illogical and it seems incredibly self-destructive especially for the country you live in, I think it's more than okay to put that off onto evil. Obviously, you've got stupidity, you've got free will, but it's evil. These people, for some reason, are just evil. Maybe they're under the influence of darker forces, but they're just evil. And you can then compartmentalize them as that. They're just evil. I can't understand. There's no point me trying to rationalize why this happens, because it's so incredibly illogical why it happens. They're evil. And then you can move on, controlling the things that you want to control and the things that you can control, so you can change your life, the life of people around you, the political things in your life as well. So there we go. Thanks for listening today. I hope this has helped a little bit. And, if it spoke to you, please like, share and subscribe. I'd love to keep exploring these questions with you. And until the next time, may God bless and give you peace.